Hello, and welcome to Remember the Film, the podcast where they keep asking us if we're back. And yeah, we're thinking we're back.
Perfect. Excellent choice, Hugo.
Joining me this week to talk about John Wick are my two master assassin friends, Jeff Grizz Ulrich.
Hello.
And Josh Bradley.
Hi, hello, hi.
Hi, how you doing, guys?
I'm doing great. I'm just having a real hot streak in Jeff Ulrich's life these days. Having good weekend after good weekend.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Love to hear that. So this
you
week
guys
we're
sound
talking
so
about...
enthusiastic about my happiness.
No, I just didn't know what to add to that. I'm happy about it.
That's great, Jeff. Have a good... that's good.
It's good. Cool. This week we're talking about John Wick, the first in what would eventually become a series, and what a lot of people consider the most consistently good series of movies Keanu Reeves has been in. He's been he has a weird career trajectory where he's been like in a classic movie in the 80s that people love the character for, like Bill and Ted, and then The Matrix, and then he came back again with John Wick, so he kind of made different comebacks throughout his career. You haven't seen this movie before this week, right, Josh?
That's correct. I have not.
That blows my mind.
Now I have.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, honestly.
It's, I love it.
I feel like these movies have been getting more and more traction as they've come out, right?
They have, yeah. In fact, I have some
box
office numbers. Yeah, I have some box office numbers. It's crazy how much traction they've gotten over the course of these three movies. Yeah.
What are those numbers, Josh?
Well, I was looking at, just for John Wick 1, and it wasn't as big of a hit as I thought it was. Given how talked about it was, and given the fact that it spawned two very successful sequels, I kind of thought it would be a bigger hit. But the first John Wick made $86 million worldwide. And that is a exact 50-50 split between domestic and international. So it made 43 domestic, 43 international. But $86 million is on a $20 million budget. That's pretty good. That's a very modest hit. But I think it's we can talk about this more later. But I think it's kind of indicative of how desperate we are for new material to make movies out of, I guess. And so it was enough of a hit, and the nature of the story was, a big world that you could kind of play in more. I haven't seen 2 or 3, but just based on how the story plays out in John Wick 1, there's a lot of characters, and he clearly knows everybody. There's an implied history with everyone he encounters pretty much. So which I think is really cool, and I want to talk about that more. But my point is it was a modest hit, but also it had a lot of potential for more movies. And so the second one made $171 million worldwide. And again, that's close to 50-50 split. It was 92 and 80, I guess. Made for 172. And then the third one made 327. Again, pretty even split. 171, 156. So
it's basically doubling with every new release, more or less.
Yes. So first of all, it remains a big hit both domestically and internationally, consistently, either one, around 50 split. And like you just said, it doubles its money from movie to movie, which is really, really impressive growth. And yeah, it's crazy.
Because I feel like there's a certain before we get into movie, but feel like there's a certain subsect of movie fans who do like the action genre a lot, but aren't as fussed with the big CGI tentpole direction that action and adventure have gone in the last 10-15 years.
They want more practical action.
They want more practical, and I feel like when new action movie with Keanu Reeves comes out, you don't know anything about it. It has a weird title that doesn't tell you anything. The first one, and I understand why more people maybe didn't go out and see it, but it kind of gains traction because when you do see it, if you're a fan of action movies, this is a really, really well-made action movie, and the kind of movie that, we don't really get a lot of because it has a relatively small budget. I think even a third one, the budget didn't balloon out of control as much as, some other franchises do sometimes.
Third
it's very
movie,
practical.
$75 million budget for the third one. Only 20 for the first one.
Which, 77 million is a big budget, but it's less than half than most big action adventure movies that come out today. So it's not that huge. It's still in that mid-range, kind of, by today's standards at least. And so I understand why it gained traction slowly that way. And, you know, I'm really happy they're making these, because, like, they keep getting, like, at least in terms of action, they keep getting better. I do think the sequels kind of get a little overcomplicated for their own good, but I still really like them. The first one, though, is, and we'll jump into it, is a really straightforward story, just a revenge thriller action movie that I think works so well as a standalone.
When you say the sequels get overcomplicated, do you mean that the action sequences become overcomplicated, or the plot is becoming overcomplicated?
Yeah, I think the one of the strengths of this franchise is that it has a very unique, I think, comic booky world and world building. But they keep building new stuff on top of it, and it does get a little, I don't know, I feel like there's a level of believability that you want to maintain for a movie in which the action is so, you know, realistic. It's all shot in camera. It's all done with great stunt work. There's no crazy CGI sequence. And so you want to keep a level of believability in the world as well that goes with that action. But that said, I still really, really like 2 and 3. So.
Yeah, I think that they're, in the sequels, they are approaching that line. But yeah, I still think that the whole franchise, the reason that it is such a fantastic franchise is that it is perfectly acceptable. All of the rules of this world, while we don't know the backstory of anything, we don't know the histories of these people, their interactions are believable, and the rules that they're setting up, you're like, okay, yeah, no, that's the rule, it's acceptable, we move on, you don't have to dwell on it. And that's so important for an action movie, because a lot of people aren't going to go into an action movie expecting to have to think a lot about the rules.
For sure. So, Josh, are you looking forward to seeing the sequels? You think you're going to watch them?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Particularly because, like, I don't know, John Wick 4 will be a big release when it comes out.
Yeah.
And so, like, I want to be in the conversation, you know?
Yeah.
I'm already out of the loop because I'm, like, 7 movies behind in the Fast and Furious franchise, and Fast 9 just came out, so, like, this one's more manageable to get back in the loop, I think. I don't have to watch 8 movies to get back in the loop.
If you're gonna catch up with one action franchise, do John Wick, because
for sure.
I think it's
because it's actually good.
Well, as a film fan, at least. You know?
There's no John Wick ride at Universal Studios about 2 miles from me, and there is a Fast and Furious ride, so maybe I should.
There's no John Wick ride yet.
You just go there and he kills you with a pencil.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to. I'm not sure I want to be on that ride, man.
I would love to stay at the Continental, though. That would be a lot of fun.
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. Particularly with people breaking the rules.
I certainly wouldn't want to be there when they're breaking the rules.
Okay. So let's get into the movie. Boilerplate stuff. It was released in 2014. As we said, it made 86 million on a budget of 20 million, which at the time was relatively small budget. At least for what the movie is trying to do, because I don't think it looks cheap at all for an action movie, and considering some of the sequences that they're able to pull off, and even considering like the actors that they have in the movie, I don't think the movie looks cheap at all. I think the cinematography is actually pretty impressive. I don't know if you guys agree.
I do. I especially when you find out that this movie was largely directed by people whose primary focus has been in stunt work. Mm-hmm. They did a remarkable job on the cinematography from my perspective.
Yeah, very few cuts. Like you said, Hugo, it's mostly done in camera, and like it's choreographed like in pre-production, not in post-production. So like they do it all with like longish takes, considering like how many gunshots are happening in a single take and stuff like that. I think it's really cool.
Oh yeah. So Keanu Reeves was cast in the movie as far back, I think, as 2012, 2013. And he, both on this film initially and then on the sequels, he actively participated in the creation of the story and the world. It was him personally that contacted Chad Stahelski and David Leitch to work on the movie. They had worked together on The Matrix before, and I think on other movies that he'd done, martial arts-based movies. I think he also directed one of them and worked them. And obviously he contacted them because they are experts at stunt coordination. Chad Stahelski famously was his stunt double for The Matrix, and has been in other movies as well. But he secretly hoped that they would choose to direct the movie, and they actually eventually did. So They presented the studio. They went to the studio and said, "Oh, look, we can work as stunt coordinators or second unit directors or action directors, but I think we have a good take on how to direct the whole movie." And apparently, the studio liked where they were going with the script, because the script didn't have as much detail on how the movie would be made on a technical level. And I think, at the basic script level, it's an interesting world, it's an interesting story, an interesting character, but it's not like anything groundbreaking or anything. We've seen, a bunch of revenge thrillers of this kind, but what elevates the movie in its genre is certainly the way it's made.
Yeah, because in terms of actual dialogue, the movie doesn't have an abundance of that. There's a script, obviously, but that's not the focus. So
even like that opening scene where it's like it's a mostly dialogueless, like 10-minute opening where you're getting a lot of storytelling done, even though there's like not really fight scenes or anything happening. But they're just like good visual nonverbal storytelling. So
100%.
They're good at this. Like, it's good stuff.
Stahelski would, of course, go on to direct both of the sequels, and he's coming back for the fourth one. And apparently there's also a fifth one that they're going to do. And I think the fifth one, they said, would be the last, to conclude kind of the narrative. Because I don't know if you know this, Josh, but the movies are kind of set... there isn't a big time jump between the movies, that's what I'll say. And so it's kind of a continuing story in some ways, even though they all stand alone to some extent. So I think the fifth one, they said, Keanu is kind of getting up there with age, so we don't want to go on too long.
And there's going to be a TV series as well. Or
there's also, yes,
there's
also apparently going to be... Yeah, they've said there's going to be a TV series called The Continental, which is going to be based around the underworld, but I don't think it's going to be starring Keanu or...
Yeah, no, I would imagine it wouldn't. You might have...
Maybe Winston.
I was going to say, you might have Winston.
Caron or Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the influences that the filmmakers cited for the movie I thought were quite interesting. First of all, they cited classic Italian spaghetti westerns from the 60s, then the films by Jean-Pierre Melville, Le Samurai and Le Cercle Rouge, which is, the red circle is the club where one of the big action sequences in the movie takes place.
Oh!
Cool nod. Yeah. And they also cited Hong Kong action movies, specifically the ones of John Woo, where the term kind of gun fu was first used, and also, of course, all the classic 2000s Korean revenge thrillers, another influence that they cited. So specifically the what's it called? The Vengeance trilogy. The Vengeance trilogy by Park Chan-wook, of which Old Boy is the second movie, was one of their inspirations.
Which you can kind of see in those long shots, those long sequences that Josh was talking about. You can see that kind of influence there for sure.
Absolutely. Premise of the movie. The movie, I know, Josh, you love opening images, and I wanted to have your take on the opening image of this film, because I thought was pretty cool, because it's like this lingering neon lit shot of a car basically very slowly banging against the wall, and Keanu Reeves, all bloodied up, just falls out of it. So it's cold open, and he looks at
in
this
media
video.
res.
Yeah, he looks at this video on his phone of what we will later learn is his late wife, and just passes out, and like it kind of.
He also has like a
dead.
wound. He's wounded.
Yeah.
He's bleeding from the belly. Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool opening for this movie, because it kind of sets up, like stuff's going to go down in this movie, so don't be worried that the first 25 minutes that you're going to see now is going to be very slow and going to slowly get to know this character.
Well, I think it's pretty smart for a number of reasons. Number one, it's kind of a deke, because spoiler alert, that's the movie's over. Like, that's the end of the movie.
That's literally the end of the movie.
Nothing really happens after that, minus like one or two things. But number two, like you just said, it kind of primes you for what's to come in terms of blood and whatnot. Number three, it establishes the wife, which will kind of be like the focus of the first 10 minutes of the movie. Also, like you said, I love that, like, it doesn't actually open on a car. It actually opens on like the outside of a warehouse.
Yeah, and the car just comes into the shot.
Yeah, and it's a warehouse by itself for like a few seconds, and then the SUV kind of rolls into frame and then crashes, which I thought was interesting and kind of unexpected and fun. Yeah, I think it's a cool opening.
Right. So then it goes into, well, what is a flashback at this point, which would be the rest of the movie, really, where we have an intro sequence of John just being this man who recently lost his wife, and we get to see him go to the funeral, talk to Marcus, who is Willem Dafoe, who shows up in the movie again.
Well, I also, kind of like I alluded earlier, I really like this opening and how much wordless exposition they get out.
Yes.
Grizz, I was reminded of the opening of Sound of Metal and seeing Ruben's morning routine and then seeing John Wick's morning routine here. But, like, he wakes up and, like, notably kind of, like, touches the empty side of the bed next to him. And then when he makes his coffee, he reaches the coffee pot. They highlight his wedding ring as he reaches the coffee pot. Then, the camera lingers over pictures of him and his wife. And, it makes it very clear that this is a guy who recently lost his wife.
And it's putting you in the emotional state of John Wick, which is important for understanding his motivations.
And it also shows, I was struck in these opening few seconds. Like, I was like, wow, this guy's got a really cool car. And, like, that's going to be important later that he's got a pretty cool car. And then, like, Hugo, like you said, you mentioned Marcus shows up. I didn't know any of the casting in this movie besides Keanu Reeves. So, like, literally 6 or 7 times I was like, oh my God, hey, it's Willem Dafoe. Oh my God, hey, it's John Leguizamo. Oh my God, hey, it's Ian McShane. Oh my God, hey, it's, Theon Greyjoy. There's a lot of that. And I'll try to call them out as we get to them.
I mean, that was how it was even when going to see the movie in theaters. In the marketing, they hadn't really shown a lot of the rest of the casting. It was very, very much focused on showing you the action that you were going to see in it.
So here's my complete list. I went, oh my God, hey, Willem Dafoe. Oh my God, hey, Theon Greyjoy. Oh my God, hey, John Leguizamo. Oh my God, hey, Dean Winters. Dean Winters is in this in like a big role. And Michael Nyquist. Do we know Michael Nyquist from anything else? He's great.
Go with Dragon Tattoo.
Yes.
He was the original,
Swedish version. Yeah,
the Swedish version that Daniel Craig would eventually play, and also he's the bad guy in Mission Impossible 4.
Yes,
and then Ian McShane, obviously, who I imagine must be in the sequels.
Also, the woman who played Perkins was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I watched for a little while.
Sure, that too. Also, the main security guy in the Red Circle was an agent in The Matrix. So that's the one I got.
How about that? Was it the Red Circle scene where like all the dudes he kills were wearing like red shirts?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Just like from a visual standpoint. Also, like maybe a Star Trek reference. I never watched Star Trek.
Could be, but yeah, that works.
Kinda, yeah, because the red shirts always die as well. Because it's like So yeah. So yeah, the intro sequence is basically him going to the funeral. We notice that his wife has died, and basically he comes back home for the funeral, and at night he receives this package. No idea what it is, and it turns out his wife left him a puppy. Basically, she arranged for after her death he would receive a puppy because she wanted him to have not only something to remember her by, but she said, "Oh, you need something to love. I don't want you to be alone. I don't want you to, we'll find out. I don't want you to become the person that you were before you met me."
Yeah, someone to grieve with.
Yes. And I also thought it was a very cool piece of writing in the card that she sends him. She says, "You need something to love, and the card doesn't count," which I thought was really good. They chose the cutest fucking puppy they could possibly find for this, which makes what will happen next even more painful. I watched this movie with my girlfriend, and she was not this time, but the first time we watched it together, she was sobbing uncontrollably at this sequence because like the thing of the puppy, and then the puppy, it dies. John Wick basically runs into he takes his car. As we said, he has a really cool car. It's a Mustang, right?
Mustang, yeah, 69 Mustang.
He's a really cool 69 Mustang, and he goes to an airport, I think, of some sort, and he kind of knows the security guard at the airport. Or is it a big parking place? That's after he's gone. Yes. he goes to the airport. He kind of knows the guy, and he just opens for him, and he drives around like a maniac in the airport, and he kind of almost crashes his car against something just to feel something. And the anger that he lets out in that sequence kind of lets you know, oh, there's something going on with this guy, even before you know he's like this secret master assassin.
Yeah, that's a cool thing about this intro that we haven't talked about yet. Is like it's like 15 minutes of Keanu Reeves just being like a normal-ish person, and like we don't know what his deal is yet, and like and then like after like the inciting incident happens that you're about to talk about. The next 15 minutes, the rest of Act 1 is basically everyone reacting to, oh my god, something happened to John Wick, and now John Wick is going to be a thing again. And I think that's really smart. Like, the first chunk of the first act, we just get John Wick without any kind of context. Then the second half of the first act is people talking about John Wick, and it's cool. It works.
Yeah. I love also in this whole intro sequence how the camera is very still. The colors are very washed, muted. There's whites. There's the very simplistic color palettes. And then when he goes back into the underworld, the criminal underworld of New York, it becomes more colorful. The camera moves a lot more. And I think they contrasted their style as well to create these two very different feeling environments in which he kind of lives.
Absolutely, yeah. One thing that I'm not sure I knew going in, or maybe I didn't know, but regardless, like having not seen this movie, but having it, you know, I've heard it talked about a lot. I knew that it was like the premise was a simple, like they killed this dog, so he goes on a revenge rampage thing. But it is more than that. Like I didn't really know about the wife factor and like how like, you know, the dog is kind of like a stand-in for his recently deceased wife and that kind of stuff. But like you buy it, you know? I mean, I'm not sure. It seems a bit of a disproportionate reaction, but you know, he is a trained assassin and everything. But like, you're right, Hugo. They did get like the absolute cutest dog in the world, and like not only is it his dog, but it's also like a you know, it's a emotional connection to the dog that's kind of like implicit because it's from his dead wife. So it's more than just his dog died.
Yeah, and that's important because again, we're talking about this movie being acceptable as a premise to everyone, and the premise, a guy goes on a rampage killing everyone because someone killed his dog, is not the sort of thing that most people would be like, oh,
it's a little reductive.
Yeah, it's a little it's almost a silly premise. But once you get the context of the dog having been a gift from his wife, and you know he's pouring all of his love that he had for his now deceased wife into this dog. Yes. Now you can kind of see how this reaction would make him go a little unhinged.
Yeah, and it's not just that, because like it's not just some guy, they kill his dog and he goes on a murderous rampage. It's this person who his whole life was a super highly skilled assassin for the criminal underworld, and somehow managed to get out of that life because of the person that he met. She died. She left him this dog, and that was like sort of his last connection to a normal life. And they kill the dog just on a whim, just because like he meets this young annoying Russian guy who, you know, gets mad at him because he talks back in Russian at him and it doesn't want to sell him his car. And, you know, just for that, they break into his home, beat the shit out of him with like a metal bat and kill his dog and steal the car. So it's like, I think they do a really good job at creating a whole different elements of why you believe this character would do this. And also they manage to keep you on his side despite the fact that he's going to murder a bunch of people.
I just wanted to shout out Alfie Allen, who plays
me too.
the douchebag.
He's really good at that.
He's really good at that, and I kind of feel bad for him because I'm worried he's going to get typecast here, because Theon Greyjoy, kind of a tool. I mean, totally a tool, if we're being honest.
Well, that's kind of thing. That's kind of exactly what Hugo's just saying. Is like he has to be a douche, to like keep you on John Wick's side. Like there's really nothing redeemable about him.
He's the worst.
He's arrogant. He's impulsive. He doesn't have any kind of. He doesn't care about anybody around him. He's selfish. So like because he's such a douche, you remain on John Wick's side this entire time. So
there's also, I think, also beyond that, there's an element of the character of John Wick is somebody who doesn't have anything. He's kind of self-destructive in that way. He he was an assassin for many years. He doesn't, I don't know, normal human empathy maybe isn't exactly the same to him as it is to other people. And I think the self-destructivity of the character is also what makes him interesting. Because, like, yes, you're on his side emotionally, but you also think, oh, maybe you could have let this go and not risk your life doing all of this, and not ruin, what maybe was the chance that you had got before to get out of that world. And the sequels kind of, without spoiling, kind of go into that a little bit. They kind of question, is he really, like, is there a reason why he's doing all this, or could he just leave again? Which I think is interesting. But it's certainly, in the first movie, it's less prominent for sure.
Well, I think what he's constantly kind of faced with is I feel like he's doing as little damage as he can, and like any escalation of the violence is usually something he's reacting to, I think.
Yes.
And again, that's, I think, important to keep us on his side to an extent. Like, I feel like he basically says, I want this kid so I can get revenge for killing my dog, but then like a lot of people get in his way to protect that kid, which is like a choice made by Michael Nyqvist's character.
And he gives them gives lots of those people multiple opportunities to not get killed.
Yes, I feel like he doesn't really kill anyone that isn't either trying to kill him or who killed his dog.
Yeah,
I think.
I do think there to some extent he is holding back. Like, it's very clear that he could kill everyone. He absolutely could do that, no question. But he's trying to get the revenge for his dog, but also trying to hold on just a little bit to what he had so that he can get back to it. Which is, again, like Josh said, important for making you be able to relate to John. Because if he becomes completely untethered, then you lose that connection to the audience.
He has a code.
Yeah.
I mean, he's killing people, but like, for a reason, I guess.
Then again, there's also that scene where he just walks into a church and murders a bunch of people with an AK. So
the church is a front.
The church is a front. That's fair.
He's there to get information, and the first guy he shoots in the knees. Then everyone else he shoots them because they're about to shoot him. So
yes,
and he doesn't shoot the old woman who was actually there to go to church.
The old woman.
So
that's right.
That's true.
What a nice guy.
He does have a limit.
Good guy, John.
He's actually a good guy, John. So after he wakes up and buries the dog, we get, I think, another really cool sequence, which you alluded to before, Josh. There's the next 10 to 15 minutes is everyone around him reacting to the fact that, oh shit, they stole John Wick's car and killed his dog. This is gonna go crazy, and it will eventually do that. But
the best example of this is Michael Nyqvist's opening, or his introduction.
Yeah, the phone call that he has with Aurelio.
Yes.
Yes.
Because John Leguizamo. Go ahead and recount it.
Yeah, basically, John Leguizamo plays Aurelio, which is this guy who basically owns a
chop shop,
a mechanic.
Chop shop, yeah.
It's a chop shop.
A chop shop. Okay, I don't know the lingo.
They people steal cars and take them to a chop shop to have them broken down to parts.
Yeah, like GTA.
GTA.
Yeah. And he works for the criminal underworld. He kind of works for Vigo, who is Michael Nyqvist and is Josef's father. But Josef shows up with John Wick's car, and he instantly recognizes it, and he's very distressed right away as soon as he sees the car. And so Josef starts bragging about the car, and he says, "Oh, we own you. You have to work for me. Just fix my car." And he gets mad, and he punches Josef, and he says, "Get the hell out of here with this car. Did you kill the man you stole this car from?" And they're like, "No, we just beat him up. He's a nobody. Who cares?" And so then Josef, Vigo, who's Josef's dad, is informed that Josef has done this. And so he calls Aurelio and he says, "I heard you struck my son." And Aurelio is like very, he says, "Yes, sir, I did." And he's like, "Could I know why?" "Well, he stole John Wick's car and killed his dog." And he's like, "Oh." And he turns into, and it's really cool because he also turns into the camera and he just goes, "Oh," and hangs up.
And there's a music cue there as well at that moment.
Yeah.
That is perfect. The music
hang up is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good because, like, at this point, you're thinking as an audience member, you don't know exactly who this John Wick person is, but everybody seems so scared of him. And in the next scene, Yosef goes to confront his dad, and he just gets beat up because he did this. And he says, he tells this legend about the Baba Yaga, as John Wick is called, this very incredibly skilled assassin that they sent to do the most difficult jobs, and who is also basically was the person who built the foundation of all their wealth and power within the criminal underworld of New York.
So I just wanted to point out something, because anyone who's done any research on this movie has probably read this factoid. The Baba Yaga is not the boogeyman. It's an old woman, like a hag or a witch, which is why I think it's so weird that they chose that. John Wick is an old woman.
Yeah, it just sounds cool.
It does
sound
cool.
I think a lot of the choices in this movie, this is cool, we'll do that.
Well, in the dialogue between Vigo and Yosef, Vigo refers an explanation to Yosef of who John Wick is. He says he's the Baba Yaga, which Yosef translates to boogeyman, and then Vigo says, no, he's the guy you call to kill the boogeyman, which is so blood turning. It's so cool.
I don't always love it when people tell you how cool characters are, but for some reason with John Wick, and maybe it's because they deliver on that coolness.
Yeah.
But like that moment is like, oh dang,
yeah,
you messed up.
And so after this, we get Vigo basically sending men to John Wick's home, and in the meantime, John Wick has gone to Aurelio's shop. He's found out that it was Vigo's son, and he's gone back home, and he goes with a massive sledgehammer to destroy the floor in his basement where he had all his assassin gear. And it's kind of a moment where he's like unearthing his old life that he'd buried. And I think it's a cool, like, symbolic way to do it. The fact that he's unearthing it after he buried his wife and his dog. We get the sequence of him in the shower with all the like crazy assassin tattoos, and he gets into the suit and all that, and it's this slow tension build up to the men actually going to his home. And then there's a really cool sequence before the action starts where the music swells, and it's going to start, it seems like it's going to be the classic rock music from any action scene in any movie, but the music cuts out as soon as he shoots the first shot, and the first like 20 seconds doesn't have any music, and it's just him killing people. And here is where, I think a good 25, almost 30 minutes into the movie, we get our first major action sequence. And, we get what the John Wick movies are known for, which is this really intense, really well choreographed gun fu type choreography where the camera doesn't cut a lot, where you can always see Keanu Reeves is actually doing all the moves. And to me, this moment, the first time I saw this movie, because the premise was really well made, but I thought, this is nothing new. But seeing this moment was when I realized, these guys really have an idea for what they're doing with this, and they're doing something really unique in today's, action genre and what it does.
And the end of this scene is the first example of a detail that I really like in this movie that it kind of I alluded is suggesting a larger world. The fact that the police knock on his door. Yes, and John Wick knows the cop, and the cop knows John Wick, so he's like, "Hey, John. Hey, Jimmy.
Working again?
You working again?
Yeah.
Just sorting some stuff out."
Yeah, and the fact that like they have that rapport, and kind of just like he turns the other way to like let John handle whatever he needs to handle. I think that's a really, really good detail, and that like comes up again and again. Like every time you think John Wick's in trouble, he knows the person who might get him in trouble, and so he's not in trouble. And like I like that. That's something about a guy who knows everyone and like is friends with everyone. I just like watching that. Yeah. It's like Danny Ocean in Ocean's 11. Precisely. Danny Ocean's his friend with everybody. Yeah.
He's great.
Fun to watch.
They all know him. They all like they're friends to him, but they also know what he's capable of. So they're kind of a little scared.
Yeah. You working again, John?
You working again, John?
And like the bodyguard outside the club, Francis or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same sort of deal.
Another one. And after that, he calls the cleaners that are gonna clean up his home, and we get another cool sequence of world building where they just call this cleaning company that comes and cleans bodies up, and they're these really like huge dudes with like tattoos and big beards, and it's great.
And they pay with gold coins.
With the gold coins,
which
yes.
is super cool. The underworld deals exclusively in gold coins.
Yeah, the little details of world building is what makes this movie so unique.
Well, when he calls for the cleaners, he says, "I need a dinner reservation for 12."
Yeah, for 12.
He's saying how many people need to be cleaned up, and I think later on, like when he's at the hotel, like I think like a hotel clerk says, "Do you need to make a dinner reservation?" or something like that. Like they call that back, and I think that's
they have a lot of
cool detail.
They have a lot of euphemisms that they use for stuff, and they're often food related. And there's one in John Wick Part 2 that is my favorite, and it's so good. I can't wait for you to see it. When you see it, let me know. Great scene. It's so funny. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
It's so funny. So after this, this is where basically we're introduced to John Wick as this crazy, skilled assassin who kills everyone. The action sequence is fantastic. There's that final kill where the camera starts from the point of view of his door and it slowly moves into the corridor, and there's this struggle that they have on the floor, and he kind of does a spin and then punches the knife into the guard, and that final kill is like so brutal. There's no cuts. It's all choreographed to the millisecond. It's so great. But after this, basically John drives to New York. He got a new car from Aurelio and he goes to New York, and he goes to the Continental, and we're introduced to another element of world building. Continental is basically this secret underworld hotel where all the criminals of New York, and we'll find out of the world really, go to basically have a safe haven where no business may be conducted underground on Continental grounds. And so he gets a room there, and that will be essentially his base of operations for all the killing that he's going to do.
Also, at this point, we know that Marcus, played by Willem Dafoe, an old associate of John Wick, has been hired by Viggo to take out John Wick for $2 million.
And he tells him he'll do it. But we're also informed that it's an open contract, meaning anyone can collect on it. So,
and we quickly learn there's like some cross cutting, and I wonder if they like
cross-cutting there.
There's some cross cutting between like Viggo like putting out the contract on John Wick and like John Wick talking to Ian McShane's character. What's his name? Winston. And like we learn basically simultaneously that like you're not supposed to conduct business, quote unquote, at the Continental, but also Viggo's going to pay double to people to break that rule.
Do that, yeah.
So yeah, it's good stuff.
So Ian McShane's character Winston is one of, like, we get introduced to the concierge of the hotel, which is Sharon, as he's called, which is, it's the Greek mythological figure Charon, really, who kind of takes people from, who died through the River Styx.
Yeah, the boat captain of the River Styx.
The boat captain of the River Styx, yes. It's kind of another little element of symbolism that they use. All the characters in this movie, for me, are so cool and unique. There's no characters feel the same. They don't necessarily have like big dramatic narrative arcs, but they're very well defined, I think. Like Winston in the first movie shows up for a few scenes, and I think he makes a really good impression.
He makes an impact, and because Winston he owns the Continental.
He owns the Continental.
He sets the rules, and it's very clear. They make it very clear throughout the movie that not only does he set the rules, but he is clearly very capable of enforcing the rules.
Yes, he is.
Which gives him a lot of power.
Yeah. In the first conversation, he's the first person who questions John. Do you really want to do this? Because like once you get back in, you might not be able to get out as easily as you have in the past. But yeah, so John is convinced that he has to do this to get his revenge, and so Winston, who is, for some reason, Winston is more on John's side than Viggo's side, even though he should be kind of an impartial overseer, but he does...
Well, Viggo's breaking the rules. He's encouraging people to break the rules of the Continental.
Yeah, so but he... I don't know. I don't know if Winston knows that he's contacted someone who's willing maybe to break the rules. So But
also we've established that John has good relations with everyone. He's a professional,
with everyone,
so nothing's ever been personal. So he can be friends with all these people, and he has a good reputation. So of course Winston's going to like him.
and he gives him a hint that Yosef is in the Red Circle. And, the quote that I was mentioning before. And it turns out the Red Circle is this really incredibly cool secret club in New York, or at least exclusive club, branded with this big red neon circle. And here we get my favorite action scene in the whole movie. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I do think the movie, in terms of action, peaks with this scene. And then later on, it is still very good, but it is kind of more of the same. This sequence where he first slowly sneaks into this red circle place, and there's this really serene music and beautiful lights, and he's slowly picking off all the guards, and then suddenly it becomes more of an action sequence as they find him out, and then it moves on to the actual club where there's really loud, techno music, and I think this whole sequence is the best one in the film.
I think the reason this sequence resonates so much with me is because it plays out the way every stealth video game I've ever played has played out. Where I'm trying to be stealthy, I'm trying to follow the rules of the game and stay hidden and not get into anyone's line of sight. Oh, I screwed up, time to kill everyone in the room.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
When that happens, it's like not quite like in time with the music, but it kind of is. Like there's like club music playing, and like the choreography of the fight is kind of somewhat choreographed to the music happening. And
the other thing, and this is true of every action sequence in the movie, but they take such a great approach to these action sequences where it is realistic. They use cover. They
have to reload.
They have to reload all the time.
Yeah, they count the number of bullets, and he has to reload in real time without any cuts, and
and they're picking up. He's picking up guns off of other bodies because he's run out of clips on his person, so he's got to They again are bound to actual reality in respect to how the guns are used.
He gets shot multiple times, but he's wearing a vest. Yes. We saw him put on a bulletproof vest before the scene. Yeah.
That's another thing that's so good about these, I think, that he's not always perfect. Like he's
not invulnerable.
The most skilled, but he's not completely invulnerable. And also he's not afraid, like it doesn't always look good the way that he kills people. Like sometimes he just does the most effective thing because it doesn't always have to be, perfect choreography. It's just choreographed in a way that feels real. It feels like he's actually reacting to what the guards are doing.
Well, and it just, in general, throughout the whole movie, I love that John, like I was talking about him using cover. It's a thing that happens in so many other action movies where the main character gets to make bad decisions without consequences because they're the main character. Like we said, John does get hit, but like when other characters step out of cover for too long, John kills them. And so it's part of what makes this action so brilliant is because not only does it look really cool, but it's also exactly how a professional would go through this sequence. And I just, it does make the movie for me. The world is cool, but the action is what sets this movie apart for me.
It's also, whenever he makes a mistake, he pays for it. The fact that he's so concentrated on looking at what Yosef is doing that he doesn't notice that there's another guard coming around, and that's when he gets spotted. And for that reason, all the guards are alerted, and so Yosef actually manages to get away from the red circle, and he has to find them again. That's another thing. Also, the final fight is against Daniel. He's called Daniel Bernhardt, and he's the other main agent in the Matrix trilogy, which I thought was fun. And he's also coming back from Matrix 4, so don't know, maybe he'll have a bigger role there. It's just something that I noticed and I thought was fun. He's basically like a mini boss that John has to go through, because all the guards he kind of disposes of with ease, even that big giant dude that comes out of the water who looks insane. But against this guy, you notice that he actually has to fight, and he basically loses the fight because he throws him off that balcony.
Looked painful.
Looked real painful.
It looks really painful because it also looks painful because like you can tell it's a stunt person who actually fell off a thing. So even if there's padded flooring, obviously, but it looks so real. They managed to sell you on it.
He sells it on. It's the way they get up after that. Like it doesn't just pop up. Yeah. He also doesn't just writhe. It's just like, oh god. It's like when you get out of bed after you slept funny.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. So Yosef gets away, and so John walks back to the Continental, kind of like it's nothing, even though he got stabbed and thrown off a balcony. And he has a really funny conversation with Sharon, who's like, "Oh, do you need room service?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, is the doctor in?" And so the doctor shows up, and the doctor is the Keymaker from The Matrix Reloaded.
Oh, wow!
Sorry that I keep doing. There's a lot of little Easter eggs between these two franchises, and I think it's just because Keanu and Chad Stahelski have been worked on them, but it's fun to notice. During the sequence, he's patched up and he's in bed, and we see this is when we have seen that Viggo has said to somebody, to the contact, "I'm willing to double the price of the bounty if you break the rules of the Continental." And so we see Marcus in the rooftop in front of him with a sniper rifle, looking at John, and we think he might be there to kill him. But it turns out he was just checking on him because he's his friend, and he warns him that Perkins, another character that we've seen earlier in the movie, is sneaking into his room to try to kill him. And this is another, I think, really good fight sequence that we get between the two, because it doesn't look pretty at all. They're struggling. They're using whatever they find on the floor. She's using he has a wound, I'm just going to punch the wound repeatedly, and it looks extremely painful. But yeah, I think another great fight scene that feels really realistic.
He also leaves her alive because
he does,
again,
yes.
he doesn't kill anybody that doesn't absolutely have to kill. In fact, he probably should have. He should have killed her because she ends up killing Charlie, who another great moment where
so cool.
Yeah, well, you hear a gun on John, and he happens to know the person who has the gun on him. So obviously it's okay. Again, every time you think he's in trouble, he knows
Charlie
the person.
says, "Do I know you?" and then he's like, "I'm thinking you might." And so,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh,
and
hey,
like,
John.
Oh, hey, John.
Hey, Charlie. There's got to be at least 3 or 4 times where there's a moment of tension, and the tension is cut when the person's like, "Hey, John."
Yeah. Another thing that I think is great throughout the movie is how casual these people are when they talk to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
The way the casual way that he talks to the owner, that he talks to the barkeep, to the person at the bar, that he talks to the concierge is so funny to me. I don't know. It's just a really smart way to do this, because it never feels like the movie is too self-serious. It's kind of self-aware of how ridiculous it is, but it makes it work. So at this point, he has no idea. I don't think he knows where where Yosef is, but I think, does he threaten Perkins to let him know a hint of where he might find?
Yeah. She tells him that he's at a safe house. She tells him
to go to he uses this church as a front for all his money. That's right. Where he keeps all his money. So he shows up at this church with an AK, just shoots the priest in the knee,
kneecaps
and then
him.
Kneecaps him, and then kills everybody else in the church in a matter of seconds. And
except
then
the old
walks
woman.
except the woman who was just there to pray. He didn't have to kill her. And then he goes to the back of the church, and it turns out this is where Viggo kept all his money, but not just all the money. It's all where he has all the tapes and all the leverage and all the blackmail that he uses to control, a lot of his relationship in the criminal underworld. And the priest is like, "Oh, Viggo's going to kill me," and he's like, "Uh-huh." Which is another great moment of casual dialogue. So after he goes to church, he burns all of Viggo's stuff in there, and Viggo shows up though, and John is kind of looking outside. He's hoping for Viggo to show up to capture him, but they actually manage to stop John, which is another cool thing, that I think he's not invincible. He loses again at this point, and they run him over with a car, or they hit another car that hits him, and so they incapacitate him and they take him to this warehouse, and he's lost at this point. There's no chance for him to get himself out of the situation. And so Viggo spends his time now gloating and telling him why he's so mad at him that he destroyed all his evidence and stuff. And this is where, John as a character is able to really explain what his motivation was throughout the movie, even though we know, but we get this really intense scene where basically Keanu Reeves does the most acting that he does in the movie, and he has to tell Vigo that that's not just the dog, that's the only tiny thing that I had left of my wife. And to some extent it feels like that's what was left of his humanity beyond being this crazy assassin in this world. So I think, Keanu gets a lot of flack for his acting being a little flat at times, but I think he makes it work for this type of character.
It fits John well.
Yeah, I mean, this character's pretty emotionally drained, or never really had much emotion at all. So, like, I mean, he had a nice moment when he reads the card from his wife when the dog comes, where he cries. Mm-hmm. And then, but other than that, though, like, I don't think this character calls for much emotionality. Especially
the way people react to John, that, like, it's all like, oh, hey, John. Like, it makes sense that he's also just a very nonchalant, he's not he's not a really animated guy, and that's why, everything is so chill whenever he's in a trouble situation.
But like you said, Hugo, this is the moment where he kind of gets to, we get the line that opened the podcast, I guess I'm back, or I think I'm back,
I'm back.
Good stuff.
Which is a good line. And, but Marcus shows up again and saves the day, and he kills the guard that is about to kill John Wick by asphyxiating him with a plastic bag. John gets his revenge against the agent. Here he manages to kill him while his hands are tied. And then he straight up runs out to get Vigo again, and he intercepts the car, and he's about to kill Vigo, but Vigo finally shows who he really is. He doesn't really, he has protected his son until now, but faced with the threat of John shooting him with a shotgun, he basically gives Yosef away. And
he will not give his own life to protect his son. Yeah.
And another great moment of dialogue where he says, John, they know you're coming. And he's like, of course, but it won't matter. And he just walks off, which I thought was another great moment.
I want you to do more Keanu Reeves impressions. That's very important to me.
Okay. I will try.
Okay.
So at this point, John knows where Yosef is, and we get this sequence where he is now fully prepared to get this guy in the warehouse where they're keeping him. And this time, he is perfect. He snipes all of the guards from far away. He blows up their getaway cars, and he just murders him. I really like that there's no big emotional scene between the two. He just shows up, shoots him once, and then while he's on the floor, he's like, it was just a fucking bomb shot, dead, gone. That he doesn't even have time to say it was just a fucking dog.
Yeah, it's really good because, again, it shows that he's a man on a mission, and it's, he's not going to drag this out. He's not looking for an apology. He's looking to finish what he started.
He gets Yosef, and at this point, he thinks it's over. He goes back to Continental, gets his stuff, gets into the car. He's going home, but Vigo calls him because it turns out Vigo has found out that Marcus lied to him and didn't kill John. So John
didn't
got
even try
not only to his son. Yeah, he helped him actually, and he not only did he not kill John, but John got to his son, and he got to all his cash that he had there. Of course, he has more, but that's a big part of it. All his blackmail and all that stuff. And so Vigo takes his revenge on Marcus, who goes out, not without a fight. He manages to defeat one of the guards at least, or a few. But then again, Perkins is there, who had got away from the situation he was in.
Yeah, we kind of breezed past that. Perkins killed Charlie, and when Charlie's basically teaching her a lesson about you got to follow the rules, and and I just, man, I like Charlie.
Poor guy. Charlie was a nice guy.
Yeah, he
seemed nice, but
he seemed a lot like John, the nice guy assassin,
little laid back, yeah. But he's dead, unfortunately. So Vigo called John and tells him he's doing this to Marcus, and at this point John is like, I'm gonna get Vigo as well, because Marcus was his only friend he had left. It was the only person who had actually helped him out of just their friendship. And so he turns the car around and shows up at the, what is it? Is it a I'm not sure how you call this. There's containers, and is it the docks of New York?
Yeah, docks. That's fine.
I think
docks is good.
I think it's docks. Yeah. And he shows up, and this is the sequence where I think the movie does some Carfu kind of thing, where he just uses the car to murder a bunch of people. Like he throws people off cliffs with the car. Then he's driving around, and while he turns, he's shooting outside of the window and killing people. It's crazy. And at this point, Vigo is just out of his mind. He's high. We've seen him smoke a few joints and drink a bunch. He's just laughing. He's just
like,
lost it
how
at this
ridiculous is this situation? How is this guy
crazy.
still alive?
And I think he says at that point, and all because of my stupid son and the dog or whatever. And then we get the final showdown of them in the rain, in which I feel like the movie gives Vigo a little too much credit. Because, like, John has been through a lot, but he's been able to kill... I think there's a stat at the beginning. He kills 77 people in this movie with relative ease. Like, he's clearly a master at what he does. And Vigo tells him, oh, no more guns, let's go out like men, and then pulls a knife on him. And John kind of has to struggle through this fight. He has to self-stab so he can get to him and kill him, which I thought was a little unrealistic. But, you know, it makes sense for them to have a cool final fight in the rain or whatever.
It's only unrealistic because Michael Nyquist doesn't look like the guy that can do this. Which is because he's perfect for the rest of this character's role in the movie. And so it's just, you know, this is the only... Honestly, this is what makes this movie 4 stars for me instead of 5 stars for me. Is that...
This final sequence?
This final fight. And it's, you know... I don't want to say it's Michael Nyquist's fault, but it doesn't really make sense that this guy who's been hands-off for the entire movie has people to do this stuff for him. It just didn't fit for me that he should be the end-game boss. What do you think, Josh?
I mean, I agree. Well, I kind of assumed just, like, within the first 25 minutes, I thought that he would kill Yosef at, like, the end of Act 2, and then there'd be a final boss or that conflict kind of thing, which is exactly what happened. But, like, I kind of agree that, like, it's kind of a ho-hum finale in the scheme of things.
It's not a bad fight.
No, it's not, but like Hugo said, like I think the best sequence is probably the midpoint at the red circle. I mean, not that there's not great sequences after that, but like once you get in the final like 25 minutes of this, you're like, okay, like, you know, we've kind of gotten over the hump of the good stuff. Also, in this final fight, when he like stabs himself, does he like stab himself in his like existing stab wound? Is that why that like works out?
I thought that's how that was that he was already injured there.
Well, because he got stabbed in the stomach early on. He got patched up at the doctor like we talked about. And then he basically lets himself get stabbed in the same location again. So he can get the knife, so he can get control of the knife, more or less.
Yeah, which I'm sure there was an easier way to do that, John, but it works. It works out. He's self-destructive. I guess that's a reason.
Yeah. And then we get back to our opening scene.
Yeah, then it cuts back to the opening scene where John... Because how the opening scene ends is John just lying down, and it kind of looks like he dies or whatever, but turns out he had just laid down to rest a little bit. So he gets up, he gets into
he just killed 77 people.
He was just tired. That makes sense. He walks into what is, I think, either a dog shelter or like a vet of some sign.
So I felt like this must be a shelter, and the reason I feel that way is because, one, its location is among all these warehouses and things.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't come across as a vet's office to me. Plus, vets don't usually keep the dogs overnight. So,
but yeah, he takes a dog from here.
Yeah.
But
so
the other reason that I justified is that I hope it's a shelter, because otherwise John just stole someone's dog.
Yeah. It's self-pity. Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been interesting? That was the plot of the second movie, is the people who were supposed to get that dog come for revenge.
Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, that's how the movie ends. He staples himself up. He found some supplies in this place and gets a new dog. And he just walks
cute
up.
Dog.
Again,
real cute
another
dog.
Cute dog.
Very
great
cute
dog.
I'm glad it's a pit bull, and I'm glad that they chose a little pit bull, because pit bulls get a bad rep. In general, especially in movies, they get a bad rep. So it's nice to see one that's just cute and lovable.
Like this movie is very, very pro dog. They love dogs.
Yes.
sequels.
I love
Maybe more
them.
pro dog than pro people, probably.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Certainly more people
Not very
harmed in
kind
this
to
movie
people.
than dogs.
Definitely. So yeah, that's the end of John Wick. A movie that I really love this movie. I really like the revenge thriller genre in general, and I thought it had been a long time since an American movie had done something like this to this effect. I think
Taken
Kill
was only
Bill-
5 years earlier.
What?
Taken was only 5 years earlier.
But Taken is not this good. Taken's action is not as good as this. It's not even close. It's in that era.
I'll agree
of,
that the action's not as good, but there's
look. Taken
It's a pretty
is in
successful
that-
revenge thriller, yeah.
pretty good revenge thriller.
I don't think it's as good. The thing with Taken is that it is in that era of movies where they try to do Jason Bourne action, but they're not Paul Greengrass, and it just doesn't work because there's thousands of cuts, there's shaky cam all over the place, and it's just not. It just doesn't work for me.
Also,
As
Liam
somebody who
Neeson.
really likes action, who really focuses on how action is shot in movies, it just gets annoying for me. And this movie is flawless in that sense.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like this a lot more than Taken, but
yeah, come on.
just saying.
I like Taken. I
feel like-
I like this better, but I do like Taken.
Like before this, I would
It's a
think
turn
of
your
Kill
it's a
Bill.
turn your brain off and have fun movie.
That's true. That is true. But I like this
Okay.
more.
I feel like Josh and I never agree anymore.
You shouldn't have to turn your brain off to enjoy anything, is my take on that. I think Taken's good, but parts of it I don't like Taken as much as I like this.
Yeah, this is great. This is so good. Let's get to the ranking. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite action movies of the decade. It's certainly American action movie. I think it's really unique in the group of action movies that are out there right now. Even though there's really great ones like the Mission Impossible movies specifically, I think are the best at action in the sense of the big giant blockbuster that's going on right now. Again, those movies as well have the same sort of thing where the protagonist is an actor who is willing to train for months to do all these sequences himself, and it pays off. I think it just makes the action much more focused and entertaining than a lot of the big CGI movies, even though I like those as well. So I rank it really high because I really like this. On our list, I would put it at number 6. So below Boogie Nights and above The Departed.
I would put it.
You guys obviously have a little lower, but that's
I
okay.
would put it at number 16, which is below Sound of Metal, but above Bicycle Thieves.
And I would put it at number 18, which is below Jackie Brown and ahead of Incendie.
Incendie. So, how do you do this? How do we average it
Well,
out?
I just did some math. I just averaged those three numbers, 6,
Okay.
16, and 18, and that averages out to 13.3 repeating. So does that
Okay.
mean we want to put this at 14?
There you go. That's how you do it. So John Wick is at number 14 on our list. Doesn't break the top 10, but that's okay. All good movies.
There's always the re-rank in the future.
There's always a re-rank in the future where it'll be number whatever.
I did want to ask, in terms of the ranking, you're a big Keanu fan. You like a lot of his movies.
I like this guy. Yeah.
We have 2 Keanu Reeves movies here in our rankings: The Matrix Reloaded and John Wick. Of those 2 movies, which one do you like better?
I like John Wick more. The first John Wick,
Okay.
certainly. Yeah, I really, really like this movie. I just think it's so tight and concise and so good at what it's trying to do, which is a big thing for me. Like, one of the main ways in which I judge movies is, what is this movie trying to do and how well does it achieve what it's trying to do?
For
And
sure.
in that sense, I think this movie is almost flawless if it wasn't for that kind of drag at the end, I think.
Yeah, just a little
And,
below
The Matrix
par
Reloaded
fight scenes
is
at the end.
a movie I love for many reasons, and I love the way it expands the world. I love the way it subverts some of what The Matrix was, but it's certainly not a movie that is as well executed as this one is. So that's why I give it the edge.
Fair enough.
When are we getting John Wick 4? Do we know this yet?
John Wick 4 is coming out, I think, spring 2022. They've started filming a few days ago, like this week.
We're definitely not getting Matrix 4 and John Wick 4 in the same year then.
No, it was supposed to.
Okay.
It was
They were
supposed to be
the
that way,
same
but
day.
then it was initially. Yeah, they had set them for the same day, which is weird, and it's set the internet on fire. And the conspiracy theorists on Reddit saying, "Oh, Matrix 4 and John Wick 4 are actually the same movie, and the John Wick was actually inside the Matrix all along," which was great.
I know Carfu.
I know Carfu. I know Gunfu. But yeah. No, I think the movie is probably going to come out around it. Or I think all three of these have come out around March, April in their respective years. So I would expect it to come out then.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, actually, the second one came out in February.
Oh,
The third one came out in May.
in May.
The first one came out in October.
Oh, then I got that completely wrong. But still,
Maybe Italy. Maybe Italy release.
It could be.
That's
It's got to
the
be
US
tough
release.
to tell sometimes when the movie released, for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is tough. But yeah, I'd expect it to come out in the spring at some point or early summer, I suppose. But yeah, I'm excited for it. We'll catch up back to it when it comes out, and we'll see what we think. So that was our episode on John Wick. Hopefully Josh watches the sequels and lets us know at the beginning of some episode down the line if he liked them or not. And yeah, thank you for listening. Let's plug ourselves. Where can people find you guys? Josh?
You can find me on Twitter at Brosh Jadley, and on YouTube, Movies I Love, So Can You.
I am at Good Game Grizz on Twitter and on Twitch, where you can watch me play a great variety of video games as well. And you can also find me on The Week in Pop on the Pop XP YouTube channel, where we talk about a variety of movies and TV shows and comic books and video games and all sorts of stuff like that. Please check us out.
Nice. And you can find me on Twitter at Hugo_P9, and you can find me on letterboxd at, it's Hugo_P, but just search for Hugo P9. Nobody else is called that way, so you'll find me.
I'd also like to plug a podcast called Remember the Film, where next week we'll be watching Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, yes. There you go. So, classic. We're going old school next week, I guess.
Doing a little old school
Yeah.
Kubrick action.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
The
Excited to talk
Cube.
about that one.
Excellent movie.
Don't.
Yes.
Let's not call him that.
I'm definitely calling him the Cube.
Stan the Cube. Whatever.
Stan the
We did it.
Cube.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks
Bye,
for listening.
everybody.
Bye.